Thank you very much, Senator Brown. You're gone? Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Senator Brown, Senator Brown. Senator Brown, thank you very much. Senator Morgan.
Mr. President, I have sat throughout this debate thus far, and I have listened quite intently. The divergence of views manifest throughout our debate here today in the Senate, and indeed in the lower house, as well as the public commentary, the service club meeting keynotes, the newspaper editorials, the social media posts and all. They have all caused me, Mr. President, to reflect and be mindful of the most important thing in all of this. Mr. President, concern and anxiety engulfed us all as Hurricane Melissa stalked our southern shoreline for days. And when the system finally hit, as pandemics and extreme natural disasters do, it was no respecter of persons. Hurricane Melissa did not discriminate. It had no regard for whether a person or a household was JLP or PNP. It had no regard for whether a person was rich or poor, black or white, male or female. It devastated everything in its wake, and it impacted the lives of persons adversely affected. Hurricane Melissa, Mr. President, damaged dwellings, schools, churches, shops, bars, farms, government buildings, and community centers. It affected government, opposition, the private sector, faith-based groups, civil society organizations, service clubs, and ordinary citizens alike. Now the question is, having regard to the collective damage, displacement, and suffering wrought by Hurricane Melissa, shouldn't our response as a nation benefit from solidarity? Shouldn't it benefit from unity of purpose and a collective resolve to build forward better as we pivot, Mr. President, from resilience to resurgence? We have done it before, Mr. President, so I know we are capable of it. It was not so long ago that our country had the massive proposition of restoring an IMF program and charting a course toward debt reduction and a stable and sustainable macroeconomy. I served during the period, Mr. President, as a senior aide to then opposition leader Andrew Holness, now Prime Minister, of course. I am acutely aware of the national solidarity, love for country, and political maturity and restraint that was required to provide the political space to the then government and support the reforms, even when some within thought we should do it differently. Mr. President, that was the epitome of leadership. It took leadership, Mr. President. We had the experience as a country back in 2013 of having to navigate and emerge better from a fiscal hurricane caused by prior years of fiscal challenges. We had fiscal rules and other strategic reform-related legislation enacted. The fiscal program saw the then PNP government presiding over billions of dollars. We had EPOC. We did not, however, have a joint select committee on either the fiscal rules or the other key reform-related legislation. So we navigated the fiscal hurricane of 2013, and now, Mr. President, we have the devastation caused by an actual hydrological hurricane to overcome. Contrary to the social consensus and unity of purpose we enjoyed as a country back in 2013, our quintessential post-hurricane response effort is characterized by stark political divide and, I dare say, obstruction. Now the question is, Mr. President, what has changed? Why is our reconstruction framework not benefiting from bipartisan support in the way our fiscal reform framework did back in 2013? The answer lies in leadership, Mr. President. When you consider the leadership and cooperation we provided when we were in opposition back in 2013. The people currently in opposition simply do not have it within them to reciprocate. My perusal of the bill leaves me to conclude that the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA, the bill before us this afternoon, is the embodiment of three things. One, a careful consideration of the post-disaster reconstruction model adopted by the other disaster-hit countries and their experience in terms of success or failure. Two, Jamaica's seemingly intractable challenge with the existing state bureaucracy and deficit in efficiently moving from project conceptualization to project implementation. And three, a careful consideration of the reconstruction model that would be most suitable, fit for purpose, and effective given Jamaica's prevailing realities and project implementation challenges. This is the backdrop against which the bill before us has my support, Mr. President. And while there are several other reasons, there are three principal provisions that cause me to support the bill. Clause 10.1, the NARA CEO shall prepare and submit to the Minister a report on the activities of the authority for every 6-month period. Number 2, Clause 10.4, the Minister shall, as soon as is practicable, cause a copy of the report to be tabled in both Houses of Parliament. And 3, Clause 9.4, the Auditor General shall be entitled at all times, and at all times mean all times, daytime, nighttime, anytime, to examine the accounts and other records in relation to the authority. So how come there is this impression being given that there is no monitoring, there is no oversight, and there is no accountability? How come, Mr. President? Given the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa, timely reconstruction is now required. NARA brings speed and agility. Effective project coordination is now required. NARA brings scale and enterprise-level scope. Efficient procurement is now required. NARA brings reduced bureaucracy and enhanced project implementation capacity. Mr. President, the reconstruction and resilience building imperative that is before us is not about the whim and fancy of government. It is not about personal power, ego, or political aggrandizement. It is about the people, Mr. President, our Jamaican brothers and sisters, especially those out in Western Jamaica who deserve a Jamaica that is not merely rebuilt, but rebuilt in a more purposeful, climate-smart manner. And that is why we say we are not just building back, we are building forward better. That is why we say we are moving from resilience to resurgence. Mr. President, for those who continue to speak of an oversight board, it bears repeating that NARA is a special purpose vehicle for project implementation and will operate as an executive authority. Neither cabinet nor parliament is bound to any one form or approach to establishing a statutory body. Procurement under NARA will be done in accordance with the orders to be issued by the finance minister. The Jamaican people can rest assured, therefore, that the imperative of securing value for money remains non-negotiable, Mr. President. An embrace of agility and speed does not mean a compromise or departure from standard and honored governance ideals. The newspaper headline of Tuesday, 28th April 2026, Mr. President, underscores the urgency of now and why the government is resolved to do what NARA sets out to do, Mr. President. This is the headline. It reads, 6 months in the dark. Parity residents plead for water, electricity, months after Hurricane Melissa. This underscores the urgency of now. Mr. President, this piece of legislation is about the people who have been hurting, people whose lives and livelihood have been disrupted, people who are vulnerable to the vagaries of a changing climate, people who need help from the government, and they need that help now. one of Jamaica's most accomplished and renowned sons in the area of disaster preparedness, emergency management, and post-disaster recovery, Mr. Ronald Jackson, formerly of ODPEM and subsequently of SEDEMA, spoke in an interview 3 Wednesdays ago on Nationwide News Network's This Morning program. The question was posed, Mr. President, to Ronald Jackson. From your experience, when it comes to rebuilding, what's your reaction to Narra? In response, Mr. President, Ronald Jackson said the following. Narra is an important institutional vehicle. There are different ways that you can go about it. You can have a standalone institutional system or help to drive your recovery processes. Or you can have one that is embedded. So there are different approaches. So going ahead with a Narra makes sense, particularly if you're looking ahead with the resilience building agenda, moving beyond just a focus on Hurricane Melissa, but starting to look at how we target those weak areas across different sectors. Infrastructure, housing, your transport, looking at issues around the people elements. He continued, Mr. President, there are huge vulnerabilities still in the country that need to be addressed in a very systematic way. So I think that Narra is fit and proper. And me say, this is Ronald Jackson, one of our foremost experts and specialists in this area saying these things. And I'm continuing to quote him. So I think that Narra is fit and proper to work with the existing MDAs to take a coordinated and focused look on addressing some of these, what I would call points of failure, such as Hurricane Melissa, or a seismic event, or a COVID event, which, acts as a trigger. This is an overwhelming endorsement of Narra, Mr. President, by one of our foremost disaster management and response specialists. Mr. President, we hear the opposition and are not entirely surprised that instead of constructive engagement and support, they have opted to withhold support for the bill and resign themselves to being perennial detractors. But we must hasten to remind the people of Jamaica, Mr. President, that the opposition PNP are the same set of people who criticized the loudest during COVID, and we successfully navigated that. The opposition PNP are the same set of people who shouted for years, where is the crime plan? Where is the crime plan? They criticized the loudest as it relates to the annual murder tally. But just look at us now, Mr. President. Jamaica is turning the corner in crime management and is reducing the murder rate year over year, Mr. President. Mr. President, the very point the government went to great lengths to advance years ago in relation to our crime situation is the very point I am compelled to make in this debate regarding post-Hurricane Melissa reconstruction and resilience. In implementing the zones of special operations, ZOSOs, and utilizing states of public emergency, SOEs, this Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government made the point several times over that the nature, scale, and prevalence of gang activity and criminality were of such that it exceeded the capacity of routine policing and as such required special measures. The special measures served to produce our law enforcement ecosystem, particularly the police, an opportunity to build institutional capacity, acquire critical assets, enhance operational capabilities, and implement strategic reforms. That strategy, Mr. President, ZOSOs, SOEs and all, what we had long dubbed Plan Secure Jamaica, has borne fruit and is paying rich dividends. I speak of an 8% or so reduction in murders for calendar year 2023, a 19% reduction in murders for 2024, a massive 43% reduction in murders in 2025, which was a 31-year low. And for 2026, year to date, there is a welcomed 23% reduction in murders. No wonder the opposition PNP, Mr. President, the perennial detractors, pessimists, and obstacles to Jamaica's progress prosperity and development cannot bring themselves to give credit where credit is due as it relates to Jamaica's vast improvements in crime management. It is the same logic that we applied to the once seemingly intractable crime management situation that we are applying to project execution under Narra, Mr. President. The Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government is respectfully saying to the people of Jamaica, including our good friends in civil society, that the nature, scale, and persistence of our project implementation deficit as a result of systemic silos, fragmentation, bureaucratic red tape, and public procurement ecosystem that moves, Mr. President, at a snail's pace warrants special measures. The government-exclusive, public-private partnerships, and private sector-led projects under Narra constitute the special measures within the framework that will achieve the results and impact the government and people of Jamaica desire. Mr. President, the social media account of opposition leader Mark Golding had the following posted to it at 11:10 a.m. on the 22nd of April 2026. And I'm quoting the goodly opposition leader here. He said in the post, "Narra is really a revamped attempt to inject higher levels of growth into the economy. Jamaica has faced very low levels of real economic growth for a decade. Promises like 5 in 4 were spectacular failures. We have had negative growth from economic shocks, but no structural shift to deliver high levels of growth." That was what the opposition leader sought to play upon social media. Apart from the blatant and disgraceful ill will and mean-spiritedness laden in that post by the opposition leader, aren't those words from him quite instructive, Mr. President? Do they not put the opposition PNP's outlook on Jamaica and their politically motivated objection to Narra into better perspective? Isn't it obvious that the opposition PNP is in this zero-sum game, a scorched earth strategy, if you may? It is increasingly apparent that theirs is the view that for the opposition PNP's political fortunes to improve, positive, game-changing, and people-uplifting things must not happen in Jamaica. Isn't it obvious that the platform on which the opposition PNP stands is one of political opportunism and vulgar exploitation of the people's displacement, their anxiety, their impatience, and socioeconomic hardship caused and exacerbated by the passage of Hurricane Melissa? Isn't it obvious that the Mark Golding-led PNP would prefer to weaponize and politically exploit the people's hardship rather than cooperate and support the government on the establishment of Narra? On the very day that the opposition PNP held a press conference to grandstand, exploit the post-hurricane relief and recovery bureaucracy, peddling falsehoods in relation to the ROOPS program, including the embarrassing untruth that Labour and Social Security Minister was away in Finland, Mr. President, opposition leader Mark Golding stood in the Parliament and called for a joint select committee on this very Narra bill that we are debating this evening. So they lament the pace of post-hurricane relief and recovery in the morning, and by mid-afternoon, they are in the Parliament calling for something that would only further delay the pace of the very relief and recovery they are bemoaning. What can go so, Mr. President? What is particularly unfortunate, shameful, and scandalous is that as a result of their partisan politics, the PNP MPs in the areas that were most devastated by the passage of Hurricane Melissa have abdicated by not supporting this Narra bill. It is the clearest and most repugnant and egregious indication yet that they put their partisan considerations over the interests of the very people they were sent to Parliament to represent, the very people they profess to care about, Mr. President. You know, it was the renowned American essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson who once famously said, "Your actions speak so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." You will note throughout this debate today, Mr. President, throughout this debate, you will hear them go to great lengths to talk about the fact that they see the need for a Narra and a vehicle for reconstruction. Mr. President, my and Michael Jackson's non-performing Member of Parliament in St. Catherine Eastern, the PNP's Denise Daly, captured the Mark Golding-led opposition PNP's position on Narra quite profoundly and succinctly when she exclaimed in her contribution to debate in the Lower House, "We support the bill," she said. "It is what is in the bill that we don't support." Just work out that PNP logic for me. That's PNP logic for you. Mr. President, based on the opposition PNP's utterances and withholding of support at key junctures in the life of our great nation over the past decade, there is a segment of the population that is convinced that for partisan political reasons, the opposition PNP does not want to see Narra succeed. The people who feel that way may well have a point, Mr. President. After all, what would the opposition PNP have to criticize and harp on if they are no longer able to weaponize the 5-in-4 growth aspiration that was promulgated back in 2016? What would they have to criticize and harp on if they are no longer able to weaponize the quantum of funds returned to the consolidated fund each year as a result of our unwieldy bureaucracy and procurement-related underutilization of the capital budget of the respective ministries, departments, and agencies of government? As the people of Jamaica have seen, as a result of the government's crime management successes, Mr. President, successes which have caused the Peter Bunting to no longer find it politically expedient to shadow the national security portfolio. Successful implementation of Narra would take from the PNP the economic growth, state of infrastructure, and capital underutilization political points they like to weaponize. Indeed, they would have to pivot to something else. And as they have done with this issue of body-worn cameras, since they can no longer harp on the country's murder tally. Mr. President, we on this side have every confidence in the leadership of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness. He led from the front in taking this country through the COVID-19 pandemic. He led from the front in turning around our high murder rate as a country, a 31-year low for 2025, and we're on course to have a similar feat here in calendar year 2026. He has led from the front in managing our economy in a way that has preserved our macroeconomic stability and made us resilient, as our multilateral development partners and the renowned ratings agencies attest to. Time come, Mr. President, for our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, to lead our post-Hurricane Melissa reconstruction and resilience as we, in service to the people of Jamaica, build forward better and move Jamaica from resilience to resurgence. You know, Mr. President, one of the banes of our existence has been a lack of appreciation for context, discretion, and that which is situationally appropriate on the part of some gatekeepers in our country. And some of the gatekeepers in Jamaica are really persons who work, wear, and serve in what the bill describes as approving entities. And you know, Mr. President, Owen Blacker Ellis has a poem that is useful comic relief, but you can draw some perspective from it when you consider the gatekeepers across ministries, departments, and agencies of government. In the poem, Gateman, Owen Blacker Ellis says the following: "Me is a gateman, keyman, watchman, security expert. Everybody have to pass through me. Me not partial, cater or curry favor. Everybody have to show ID. You could be the manager, governor, or prime minister. Me more solid than a rock. If you don't respect me and brandish ID, the main gate just go and stay locked. Me is a gate man, key man, watchman, security expert. Me have the power and carry weight. You know how much big management and admin people get disciplined when me a wall off the front gate? Make them murmur and grumble and beg and explain and complain and wait. Me make them lose them temper, cry high water, and get inside all 2 hours late. Woman walk on chalk line, man get vexed and resign through the power of my key and me. Me no use conscience or play ease up. Me no give lie or me no cry cree. Me is a gate man, key man, watchman, security expert. Me take big neck people. Me teach big neck people lesson for free. Anybody pass through me. Quick. Me no take argument. Me only take ID. Even the nice personnel management lady one Indian lady named Miss Lee. Me know her good, cause she did interview me and give me the bunch of key. But she come work late last Thursday. About morning Rocky, oops, I left my ID. Me just look upon her tough and say, oops, not enough. That now go work, Miss Lee. She turn red and start stutter and splutter. Then she reason, then she plea. Me just kiss my teeth and show her where the sign say, staff must show ID. She missed 2 meetings, cancel 3 appointments, and go back home a Clarendon for her ID. Cause me is a gate man, key man, watchman, security expert. People have to respect me. Even the big chairman and CEO guy, him drive up with him chauffeur and I'm Chris SUV. Yeah, his film picture hung upon the guardhouse, yes, and the place name after him. But him never have no ID. So me give him the drill, but them park up still. Till fight broke and 7 more security intervene. Me have to thump down 2, kick down 2, and Karachi the other 3. Me is a gate man, key man, watchman, security bad man. Nobody can stop me. It's last week them fire me, but me thief the bunch of key. That was Gate Man by Owen Blacker Ellis. It's comic relief. But it brings into sharp focus this gate man culture. Seized of it. This gatekeeping culture. A culture that sees many being divest, Mr. President, of a level of situational awareness. And there is ego in some instances. There's a lack of appreciation of context and discretion in some instances. And that is why we have the retardation, the inhibition on some projects that really should be moving through the system with greater expedition. Mr. President. Mr. President, this Narra bill, much to the chagrin of some, will be passed. The entity will be established and will commence operations. Narra, listen to this carefully, fellas. Listen to this carefully, my esteemed colleagues opposite. Narra will be a resounding success. Jamaica will be rebuilt and our economy will grow. The people of Jamaica will be better off for it as they will access jobs, enjoy a bounce in their livelihood, benefit from the convenience of more resilient and fit-for-purpose infrastructure, and bask, Mr. President, in the improvement of their quality of life, courtesy of their elected government, led by Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness. Those things will happen whether the opposition PNP likes it or not. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morgan. Minister?
It's been a long day.